It's Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are talking about the Spiderman. All right. Have we got an open event or anything? I know, I got something. So I haven't really been taking days off work because usually in my normal life, I spend every goddamn vacation day doing the required family visit trips and all the conventions we perform at and one vacation. And I'm always down to my last half day of vacation time by the end of every year. I just use them all. But this year I can't really go anywhere. It feels weird to take a day, a vacation day, to just not sit at my desk and work for half the day.
Well, I mean, if I'm sitting at home doing nothing, right, on my work day, I'm not going to use a vacation day to do the same exact fucking thing.
Yeah. I do more work than you do when I'm at home.
If I can't vacation, why am I spending a vacation day? I'm just wasting it as bullshit. But I think they're only going to I don't know. It's already September.
I can carry 10 days over to next year.
I can also carry 10 over, but
I've got 14 left.
I already carried 10 over. Am I just going to take off a whole month or something?
One thing that helped me is I was nearing vacation debt almost because I took more time than usual off for all the end of year cons last year and then the start of year cons this year. I basically took a lot of extra days off around MagFest and PAX South and all that. So I was running near I was scraping the bottom of the barrel. So I didn't bring any over from last year, but now I have 14 to use and I got to use at least 4 of them by the end of the year or I lose them. So I'm using one on Friday.
I got way more than that. So
because I used so many already.
I put on my task list to tomorrow figure out what to do with them. I think I'm gonna not be working a lot the rest of the year now, actually, because it's already September.
Yep, I'm in the middle of big stuff at work, so I'm not gonna do that. Also, I don't want to take I definitely don't want to take a whole week
middle
off.
Of big stuff, but I don't care how I work.
Yeah, so I'm taking a day off Friday because I had that day off already set up, ready for PAX.
I guess I could do that if everyone else is.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have a 4-day weekend. This is the longest time off I've had since the quarantine started from working. And we'll see if the weather's nice. It's very One thing I noticed, this is
gonna be
normally in our lives, this time of year, we always go to Seattle, and not every time. Don't think that I'm saying every time we go to Seattle, but I feel 80-ish% of the times we've gone to Seattle over the years, it's unseasonably sunny during PAX while we're there, and everyone local is yeah, it's never this sunny. It's we're there during the sunny weekend. But now, the first time since 2008, we are not flying to Seattle for PAX. It's been Seattle weather all week here. It's just humid and overcast and chilly, and maybe it's us.
You think the weather just follows you?
Maybe the weather just follows us. You and me, Geek Nights.
It wasn't the RIT president controlling the weather at RIT. It was you the whole time.
Well, it could have been both of us. It could have been our powers combined.
It's still you.
Might be you.
We're the weather twins. We touch each other and then weather comes down.
Man, I just had that. You even saying that weather machine thing just gave me this weird flashback to freshman year at RIT and GDT in particular.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, it's Wednesday, talking about animation, comics, manga, anime, all that stuff. You got any news or geek bites or something to talk about?
There is not a lot of news going on for me to talk about. So I went down the geek bite hole, right? People are going to say, Scott, why are you reading comics? You're not reading the book club book. It's
Listen.
Comic book takes 10 minutes to read, right?
Yep.
You don't got to sit down and warm up anything to read like you do to read a giant, enormous book like Tale of Genji.
Some comics, you can finish the whole thing in one poop.
Yeah. So I've had this book for a while. It has a number 1 on the side of it, implying that it is volume 1 of more than one, but I can assure you it is 1 of 1. So this was kickstarted about 2 years ago. It's called Bingo Love. It's pretty straightforward. It's a story about 2 black girls who were lesbians in the 60s. And then they were separated. It's not a nonfiction story, but it doesn't have anything supernatural in it, right? It's could be real, right? and I guess it has some future stuff in it because part of the story takes place after 2020. But regardless, there's nothing like sci-fi about that, right? It's just, whatever.
Yeah, that's just near future. Let's go.
Right. They were lesbians in the 60s. They were separated by their, very conservative 60s parents and church and such, right? And then for 50 years, they didn't, see each other. And then suddenly, they saw each other after 50 years. Right? So this is kickstarted about a few years ago, and I knew about it then, but I didn't pick it up until Image published it. Right. So Image, this was originally published by, I think, Inclusive Press, and the graphic novel was only like 80 or so, 90 pages, something like that, when it was kickstarted. When Image picked it up, right, it already had sort of a thing, right? Mm-hmm. So the edition that I have, which is the Bingo Love Jackpot edition, after the 80-page graphic novel concludes, the rest of the trade paperback, this wasn't hardcover, now it's softcover. That's what I was waiting for, right? Includes many stories written by fans that are they're not necessarily, I guess they count as fan fiction, right? But
they're not canon.
I think they are canon. In that they all are sort of either zooming in on parts of the story that the original didn't go into great detail on. So there would be like, what was this character doing? There's like one page, this person was doing something, right? And it's like, or I think one of them was like, a granddaughter finds diaries and learns stuff, right? About the women, right? So, yeah, it's written by T. Franklin, and they think the artist was Jen St. Onge. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that last name. It's ST-ONGE. And the colors are by Joyce Ann. If you want to read some awesome gay romance book, this
the art's
is
pretty good. I'm flipping through this here.
It's pretty A+, and you can read it really quickly. And it's a lot of fun too, right? It's not just like, a lot of times, people, I think especially people who don't actually, read a lot of romance stuff, they think, you see something like this, you think it's going to be all serious and it is, part of it is serious, right? Yeah. But it's not entirely serious. It's plenty funny, and it's still a comic book, right? You still got comic book stuff going on in here. So, and it's just one volume, and it's now a trade paperback. I don't think you can go wrong with this. Lend it to everyone you know. The Kickstarter was funded in I think a couple days or something like that. It was so popular.
Oh yeah, back in 2017.
Yeah, it just took a while for Image to pick it up and then publish the Jackpot edition and then publish the Jackpot edition in softcover. So it's now you can get the book, right? And you don't have to have some hardcover thing.
Maybe I should borrow this from you and read it.
All right, come and get it without getting diseased.
Yeah. Well, we got to do a blind drop. Actually, this is a total aside. I don't know the term for it or anything, but there was a type of trading that has been practiced in many parts of the world.
Geocaching?
It was trading in olden times specifically to trade goods while avoiding plagues between communities that generally don't interact often. Mm-hmm. Where one group would leave goods out and leave, and another group would come, they'd take the goods they wanted, they'd leave payments, they'd leave, the first group would come, and obviously that required a lot of...
Is this how you exchange money for hostages?
Yeah, it's probably the same thing.
Okay.
I guess, except you have to, I guess you have to trust each other a lot more, because with the hostages...
trust that no third parties come along and take all the stuff?
That would be a good story. The pirates, and all they do is find those bazaars and rob them in between. And then convince the two parties that they're fighting with each other and just slip away. All right, yeah. So in some other really brief news, if you didn't notice, I'm making this news partly because there's so many online cons, but people aren't really going to them that often.
You just can't stop talking about the online cons, can you?
No, I'm saying, well, I don't have any other news. You got any news you want to talk about?
I feel like we've said or anything there is to say about how
yeah, we even did a show on it. I just want to point out that the Crunchyroll Online Expo is actually happening in 2 days. It is this weekend.
Yep.
There is a whole online con. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. You basically go and register.
Level attend.
Yeah, just go to their website and you register for a badge, and they give you this badge, and it tells you how to access all their stuff, and there's a schedule, the whole ass con in there. So yeah, if you,
Whole not a half-ass con, a whole-ass con.
I mean, there are definitely some half-ass online cons. They're at least trying to make this a whole-ass con. They got some legit guests. So if you've been missing all those online cons and you're interested in anime, this is probably the one to check out, because hopefully you listened to this episode before the con happened, as opposed to how most people go. We're like, oh, wasn't there going to be some sort of anime con? Oh yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, I guess. Oh well. That seems to be like the story that goes for most of these online cons.
Yep. I just don't have that much anything new to say about the online con.
Yeah, other than
I've
that,
said everything there is to say.
I think I might actually do some stuff at this con. I think I might watch a few panels. There's some decent...
If I remember to, I will. I put a reminder of when our panel is, so I'm gonna at least do that. But
Yep, and there's we'll like either live tweet or answer questions. We'll figure out. We'll be accessible online during our panel to like answer questions or argue with you when you have a really stupid opinion and you really like that titty anime that we made fun of. Like,
I guess the thing is, when you're at a con, right? You're sort of like, all right, I'm here. I'm gonna get my time, and I put effort to get here.
Yep.
I spend money to get here. I'm gonna get my money's worth, my time's
Yep.
worth. You look at the schedule, you make a schedule, you stick to it, you try to squeeze entertainment out of it, right?
You go to things you
But
might not
if I'm
otherwise
at
go
home-
to. That's an important
Sure.
part.
Yeah, of course. But if I'm at home, I'm not captive by that con, especially if it's a free one like this Crunchyroll Expo. So if I'm not a captive to it, it's like if I don't like, I could go through the schedule and like add stuff to my schedule, but if I don't feel like it, I'll just do something else. I'm at home. I'm not losing anything if I don't.
I won't
stick to
pretend
that
when I'm at a
schedule.
con that there aren't some panels I go to because no one's ready to play a game right now. I've got an hour to kill. It's not a good time to eat. I'll go to that panel that looked like it might be okay.
Yeah, it's like, at GDQ, for example, I look at the schedule, I mark down which ones I kind of want to check out, but it's like, yeah, if I miss them, I miss them. I don't care. I don't, it's like, I'll just watch the VOD or something. Or if they didn't even have the VOD, still wouldn't be that upset about it, right?
Yeah.
I could just go find the person who does that speed run and watch them on Twitch or something, right? It's like, if I miss a panel at a con and there's no video of it ever, it's like I can find that information if I really needed to. Find the person who did the panel, something. Right? It's not the end of the world. I've missed a lot of panels in my day.
Oh, so there's one. I was just flipping through the schedule. There's one I saw. I don't know if I want to go to it, but it's interesting. Often at anime cons when we used to go, we would run the How to Run an Anime Club panel because that's
someone
just
else is doing it. Okay.
Someone else is doing it here. You know who it
Good
is?
enough.
It's our friends at UC Davis. That was the other like big anime club that we would talk to
right.
sometimes.
Yeah, they would definitely. I remember contacting us at more than one time.
They contacted us once or twice with like collaboration ideas, and they contacted us once to warn us about that one thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That was them.
That was them. They warned us about that thing, and then we didn't take their warning seriously, and then the thing happened, and it was really.
We did take their warning somewhat seriously.
Yeah, well, I took it seriously.
But there wasn't like that much we could do about it.
The moment I saw the individual in question, and my brain said, "I'll bet that's him," and then I was. We learned later that day it was in fact him, but my brain said, "I bet that's him." Yeah, we should keep an eye on this situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just leaving a pause here. But anyway, things of the day. So check this out. There's been a lot of movement lately in AI rendering, like using neural networks and machine learning to either accelerate like rendering, like taking a project, like a video game, a video card renders the things you're supposed to see and puts them on the screen, or rendering streaming video in real time. And maybe you got to like get this 4K stream out there or something. So there's been a lot of advancements recently in using AI to do that sort of thing, to take something that needs to be encoded or rendered and render it faster because the AI will maybe figure out efficient or clever ways to achieve the intent, even though it might not necessarily render exactly what the algorithm someone would have normally used would have rendered. Like that's a thing.
I mean, we're using this a lot. The most, I guess, the biggest use of machine learning these days is like image recognition technology is definitely one of the most advanced use cases for machine learning. But very closely related to that, is prediction, right? So you look at like deep fakes and stuff, right? It's like it's basically almost the same kind of code does both things, right? It's like pick a face out of a picture. Well, now I can put a face in a picture, right? I can.
Yep.
Right. So that same stuff can now be used to animate. It's like, okay, I drew 2 frames, right? We already have just straight up interpolation that people use.
Yeah,
for
but
like
that tends to make that very like linear, like it looks
Yeah,
cheap animation.
people use just straight up interpolation to make like a 30 FPS video into a 60 FPS.
And they just look weird at best.
Yeah, by just calculating the in-between frames, just like by averages.
But what if an AI was like, oh, that is an object moving downward, it should accelerate more? Like that kind of thing could happen.
Yeah, exactly. So you could use that same technology to like in between some animations. There's no technological reason that you couldn't. And if it was good enough, it would look as good as deepfakes look, right? At least given modern computing power and such. So...
Oh no! So my thing of the day, I was not going to talk about the algorithm and just talk about the thing, but I learned the name of the thing, and now I have to talk about this. God damn it! So basically, you know those old Fleischer Studios Superman cartoons that were like rotoscoped and like really.
I just watched one the other day.
They're really like high quality animation. Like those things look great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they're old too. This is from like the 40s.
Yeah.
So this YouTuber took one of the episodes from that, the Bullet Tears.
This is the thing I watched the other day. I watched this like a week
this is
ago.
why you watched the Bullet Tears. Okay. Okay. That's good. So you've seen this. So they used an upscaler that is called Waifu 2X. Mm-hmm. Which is basically a convolutional neural network thing that was trained on anime, just like contemporary anime. And they just applied it with some constraints to one of like the highest quality video we had of one of these old Fleischer Brothers cartoons. And
and they chose it, by the way, because it's in the public domain, even though Superman, the character, is not necessarily.
This is just free. I made this video, the original Superman. So
sure.
They upscaled this old thing to 4K, and holy shit, like it just looks better. It adds detail that was not there, and the detail makes sense, is consistent, is aesthetic. It's kind of amazing.
It's also a really good cartoon.
It is a really good cartoon. I love the concept of the villain in this one episode. Their superpower or their tool is just amazing.
Also,
it's a car that rams shit, but it's really just a fighter jet that rams shit.
It's also, I love those old ones because it's still jumping Superman and not flying Superman.
Yep. Also, it's got like, this is the kind of aesthetic, like this is the same reason why I like BTAS so much. Like it's a striking aesthetic.
Yeah, it's Art Deco.
Yeah. So
Only
check
blue.
this out. Like you can watch. They had my thing of the day. The page is great. It has a YouTube video of the original and YouTube video of the upscaled one, and it's just kind of amazing how good this algorithm was at making this look better. Mm-hmm. So what do you got?
All right. So 14 years ago, when Geek Nights wasn't even like a year old.
Oh my God.
Right, Liam Kyle Sullivan uploaded a famous music video to the internet. Oh my God, shoes, right? And that was a thing of the day in 2006 when it was brand new. And just like Geek Nights has refused to die, Liam Kyle Sullivan is still at it.
Oh
Way
my
to
God,
go,
I'm
Liam.
scrolling through their upload history. Yep, there's a lot there.
And just yesterday,
All the
September
way back
1st,
to shoes.
2020, Liam released a new video, masks. So this isn't like someone else taking the oh my God shoes and switching it to masks. This is the original person doing it to themselves. Before you watch Oh My God Masks,
you should really watch Shoes.
You should rewatch or watch for the first time Oh My God Shoes.
It's easy to find. It's the first video on their channel.
Right.
4.8 million
I think
views.
there's a more recent, I think they did an HD remaster.
They did a
of
full
Shoes.
version too.
Yeah, there's an HD remaster of Shoes, but you can see that many of the things from the original Shoes video managed to make a comeback, like the guy in the purple costume and such. It's like 14 years later, Liam managed to get those people, to reprise their roles as necessary for a tale for the present times. So, Liam still do a good work out there. I hope 14 years from now, Liam puts out another great music video.
Yep. I'd always enjoy when, like, 'cause I find this has been a trend with us, you and me, like, just not an internet trend, just us, where we'll find, like, a YouTube channel that does something that really, really, like, works for us. And then we discover that channel just keeps making that exact same thing. I do remember the one that was it was like Zelda characters licking each other with the weird tongues.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah. Yeah, I recall you laughing at that. I think you're the one who actually showed it to me.
I know which one.
Yeah, you're the one who showed that to me, not the other way around. I don't know what licking video you're thinking of.
I know. I remember now.
This is not Pokemon Master Sex.
No. Oh yeah, I guess that's just a tiny note of the Pokemon Master Sex. So
we should explain that.
There was some Pokemon thing that got released recently that was called the actual name of it was Pokemon Masters EX.
This is a Penn Island situation.
Sort of like F-Zero GX.
Yeah.
Right? It's Pokemon Masters EX. But obviously, you take the S off the end of the word master, and now it's Pokemon Master Sex. And that became a Twitter hashtag. Go to Twitter and type hashtag Pokemon Master Sex, and you will see some amazing tweets.
Yep. So I would say it's 1/3 really funny tweets, 2/3 horny tweets. But of the horny tweets, it felt like it was 1/3 Pokemon the character, like sexy stuff. And the other third was Pokemon characters with Pokemon sexy stuff.
Yeah.
That hashtag was, that was a trip. And we'll leave it at that. You can go look for this yourself if you want. All right. So we left plenty of time for the actual main bit in this show. But first, the meta moment. Of course, we are going to be live at the Crunchyroll Expo doing Judge Anime by its cover. We talk about some anime that we had not seen. Since we recorded this, I have actually looked at some of the shows we reviewed, and we were pretty spot on. Well, those shows were exactly what we said they were going to be. Like, I don't think we were wrong.
They are who we thought they were.
So Friday, like in a couple days on the Yuzu stage at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we will be presenting Judge Anime by its cover. We'll probably put it up on YouTube somewhere later, but for now, the only way to see it is to go to the free Crunchyroll Expo. And
we
of course,
also have officially are on the now public schedule of PAX Online, which is going to be a week long. It's not only going to be a week long across 3 Twitch channels, but it's covering both PAX Ost and West together combined.
Yep.
So depending on what you look at the schedule, don't be confused. At the top of the schedule, it's like late at night and it's showing you the Australian content. You scroll down, there'll be like a gap while everyone's sleeping, and then there'll be the PAX West content. And so basically it's like so many days long and 24 hours. The content isn't running constantly. For example, our panel is in PAX, the 3rd channel, but there doesn't appear to yet be any content on the schedule in the other 2 channels at the same time as us.
Yep, maybe that'll change. Like, you know how cons go. Like, we used to run cons.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure the schedule isn't final, but there is a lot of content on there. It's just because it's so many days and 24/7, it's not 100% full, right?
Yep. And they'll be gaming and stuff. Like, if nothing else, during this PAX, Scott and I and a bunch of our friends, the crew we normally go to PAXs with, we're going to be online, like, looking for people to just play games with. Like, if you want to play Root, get into some Tabletop Simulator, play some Overwatch with me, like, I'm going to take some days off, be playing some games, and I will gladly play games with random people on the internet.
Yeah, as long depending on what game it is, sure.
Yeah, you want to play some Overwatch with us? You want to try it?
Yeah, I will also, repeat my offer. Anyone who wants to learn to play 18xx, I will give you free personal lessons on how to play train games.
He's not kidding. He's done it. I watched him do it. It was great. And then we played a game. The listeners actually now we've been playing this game with the listener quite a bit, and the listener's getting better and better.
Yeah, you could be the other listener.
Yeah, we could have 2 listeners playing the game.
Yeah. If we get 5 listeners, they can play with themselves. We don't need to play with them.
And then our mission is complete.
Yeah.
I'm feeling this 1882. I was skimming through the rules of it.
Whatever.
There could be a different number of one of the trains, like an extra 2 or an extra 4.
All right, the book club book is still the Tale of Genji,
Hanzo.
the first novel that was ever written by human beings. And we still are going to continue reading it at some point when we read again, which is, I don't know when that will be.
I think when it might be is when it is too cold for us to do long bike trips. We'll be inside and we might actually like sit and read.
Maybe.
Or we might be working on another secret project. So stay tuned.
Who knows? Who knows what will be.
Because I read the first bit of it. I was going to keep reading. I do want to read it. I enjoyed what I read so far. Just don't have time.
Yeah, I think there's this thing. People seem to think that somehow some people just give up on this book and change books, and I'm like, I got no problem doing that. If we somehow pick a book that I didn't realize was garbage and we start reading it and it's just like, you know what, unpicked. I got no problem doing that. Even though we haven't done it, I got no problem with
but
that.
No, I want to read this. If we picked a different book, I would be every week would be saying, "Oh, we haven't read The Three Body Problem yet."
Yeah, it could have been any book. It was just the timing of the book that was selected, not the book's fault that we have not read it.
Blame the coronavirus.
Yep.
Because I'm not on the subway reading a book like I normally would.
Granted, people were saying that, just give up on it before the virus.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for the virus, I think I would have finished reading this by now.
Oh, definitely. Also, I would have had like 5 or 6 international flights in the time that we have been stuck at home. So I definitely would have cranked this out like on flights to London. I would have had
many go sit in the park despite it being crowded because there isn't a plague.
Yep.
The situations.
All right.
I would have had many bike somewhere and take a train home and read on the train home situations.
Yep.
So.
In fact, I probably would have read, if we hadn't finished it somehow, I probably would have read it on the flight to Seattle.
Yep, probably.
But now here we are. So otherwise, like, Google for Geek Nights, find our Discord, our forum, Scott's YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, us at these conventions. We're in a lot of places. We're making stuff, and we've set up pipelines to make things more efficiently during this long-running crisis. So hopefully you'll start seeing more fruits of that labor. But also, we're doing a lot of low-tier, low-effort stuff that's just fun. Like, sometimes in the Discord, Scott will just stream a game he's playing, or I'll just stream, like, some random thing I'm working on.
Oh, yeah. Lately, these days on my Twitch channel, since I got the old bike trainer and I'm biking to nowhere, just biking in my apartment, going nowhere. But I got this little game that goes with it called Zwift, which is like the little bike training game. And I've been doing that like more than every other day. And then I set it up so it's very easy for me and low effort to stream it on Twitch. Which is not really so much about you watching me bike to nowhere, even though you can do that. It's more about like, hey, I'm doing nothing and I can chat with people. Unlike, I tried streaming other video games like Paper Mario.
That's why I stopped that XCOM stream. That's a lot of effort to keep that energy up for like 2 hours.
It's hard to chat with people and play the game and focus on the game and get enjoyment out of the game while chatting. Like, it doesn't work too well. But just biking in place, like, I kind of need someone to chat with. Yeah. So the streaming part is more like, hey, come chat with. If you want to just chat with me, follow my Twitch channel, and then you'll see a notification like he's going live, and then you'll see me biking there, but you can just chat with me. And that I'm not looking for a lot of viewers. I just need like one person to be like, hey,
what you doing?
Doesn't even have to be about bikes. I'll chat about whatever as long as it's appropriate.
Scott. What you doing?
Yeah, that's gonna get a ban if you chat like that. Don't make me get off the bike and have to click the ban hammer.
All right. So this is a show that is very broad because we're covering a huge area. The concept of the Spider-Man.
Yeah. So I don't want to just like start a series of shows on like underwear perverts.
Don't worry, we're not next 2 weeks from now is not Batman.
Sure, for sure it isn't. No, but Spider-Man is like, obviously a legendary, iconic, world famous hero, right? That means many things to different people, has a long history, right?
From 1962 to today, pretty much nonstop.
So I think like no matter who you are at this point in the world, right? It's like, I think most people in some way have, at least depending on where you live, right? At least especially where we live in the English-speaking world, but also the not English-speaking world, the Spider-Man has touched your life in some way, and not in an inappropriate way, hopefully.
Yeah, not the Spider-Man experience in Wildwood.
No, not that. Right?
There was this old like rundown amusement ride that like hadn't been active for decades. But so imagine seeing this like dilapidated trailer looking thing, and there's a broken down sign that literally just says the Spider-Man experience and points at this boarded up door.
So I feel like, a lot of, superhero academic people always try to go down this angle, but I don't think it's wrong to do so, is they talk about some of the legendary superhero stuff as being just like, the same way you would talk about like, Greek mythology, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you got
which I think is fair.
Achilles,
like any random person I talk to, like I assume they have a passing knowledge of Hercules. Like if I referenced Hercules in any conversation I have with pretty much anyone, I expect that they would at least recognize, oh, that big, strong Greek guy who did some stuff. Like, if they got that far, that's enough. Spider-Man's really the same way. Like, I assume anyone I talk to is familiar on some level with Spider-Man.
Yeah, but also imagine if you were in ancient Greece, right? It's like Hercules means something to you, right? It has like relevance to your life, right? Like you could ask if you could speak ancient Greek and go to Athens. You could say, "Hey, what does Zeus mean to you?" Right? And just about everyone would have some kind of answer, right? Of how the story of Zeus, the fiction, the mythology of it, has some relevance to their life or meaning to them, positively or negatively, right? So of course Spider-Man means something to us, otherwise it wouldn't be. Right?
You know, all I can imagine is like, oh, if you're in Athens, better watch out. Diogenes might argue with you and then piss on you.
Right. So for me, Spider-Man is like, compared to all the other superheroes, I just feel like there's a lot. People always say like they identify with, right? But it's like I don't really identify with. I don't feel like I am Spider-Man.
You're not reincarnated
right?
Spider-Man about to form Spider-Man House.
No, but there's so many things about Spider-Man that I feel are about me also, right? It's like he's just some nerdy kid, right? Obviously, I was a nerdy kid. I'm now a nerdy old guy.
Wisecracking New Yorker, you got that down.
Right. New York is big in Spider-Man, right? He cares about New York. He's from Queens, right? I'm not as much from Queens as Spider-Man is, but at least I'm far. And that's all. Of course, this is only one of the Spider-Mans. There are many Spider-Mans, right? Which I think is also important, right? It's like, oh, there's a Spider-Man who's like me. Well, no matter who you are, there's a Spider-Man that's like you. They've made so many Spider-Mans.
In fact, the Spider-Verse sort of makes that canonical that there's a Spider-Man for everybody.
Right. It's like whatever Spider-Man you are, it's like, yeah, there's one that's you. It's like, hey, that's me. Yeah. Only, swinging around, right?
But even when I was a kid, like I didn't read a lot of comics. Like I didn't get into X-Men or like floppy comics until like way later elementary school, like early middle school. But I always knew, I knew the deal with Spider-Man specifically way more than any other comic character, to the point that I could not say when I encountered Spider-Man.
Oh, it's just like you just sort of always knew it existed, right?
Yep.
It's like, when did you know Mickey Mouse existed? Like, it just always did. It was just always there. But you can imagine, like, old people, like, there was a time when Spider-Man didn't exist.
Well, like us, we're old enough to be like, yeah, I remember when Pokemon came out. There was no Pokemon before that. That was like, I was in, like, high school.
That's right. Kids today, Pokemon's just always been there, right?
I wonder, this is a total aside. Does Spider-Man or Pikachu have more name recognition among the population of the Earth?
Tough to say.
I think that would be a real tough race. I think that could be real close.
It used to be that just Mickey Mouse was just like number one by a landslide. But now there's several competitors in that arena. There's Hello Kitty. There's what's it called? Obviously Pikachu, Pokemon, Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog is up there. In terms of like, fictional cartoon characters.
Yeah, let's leave out the Hell streamers and YouTube shouty men. Hopefully they're a flash in the pan.
That have the most recognition worldwide, right? The Bugs Bunny's still high up there, although less so than it used to be. There's a lot.
But I guess I have this weird like memory of always liking Spider-Man before I really even consumed much Spider-Man media. Like, I liked Spider-Man before I read any Spider-Man. But I don't know why. I just liked Spider-Man. Like, I liked the character and I liked the concept. But, like, there was a time in my life where I felt that way, but I had literally not read a single Spider-Man comic of any kind at any point.
See, for me, it was like, I didn't consider myself, like, if you said, like, things you like Spider-Man would not come on the list, would not come to mind, right? It might not even come to mind if you ask me now. Like, what are things you like, Scott? It's like, I'm not going to say Spider-Man.
K-pop.
Right, yeah. That'll come to mind right now, right? But the thing is, if I actually go and read a Spider-Man, it's like, oh shit, this stuff is good, right? It's like, I'm loving reading this Spider-Man right now.
Yep.
When I was a kid, I didn't even read a lot of actual Spider-Man. I read Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah, I know. That's why I kept telling you, go see Spider-Verse. He's in it, and I was not lying.
Not really.
But I was not lying.
But yeah, Spider-Man 2099 was Cyberpunk plus Spider-Man. But the character of, Miguel O'Hara, which is Spider-Man 2099, is just sort of an asshole. He's not like a good kid like Peter Parker. He's just this jerk who gets power.
I
His
feel
brother's actually a good guy.
I
He's
feel
an
like I
asshole.
did see a lot of the old, like really low budget Spider-Man cartoon, but that was like kid
Like
brain.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, or Spider-Man the '90s one, or
Like the '60s like bad one.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends,
Yeah,
or
that's
like
I'm pretty sure it's that one.
Spider-Man.
That's the one I
Do 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 do
remember.
do do do. That one.
I think so. I think I was interested in that because I'm just trying to think back. Like these are memories coming as I really strive. Because when I was really, really, really young, we had an Atari 2600, and one of the
Oh, that
cartridges,
game?
one of the cartridges we had was really colorful compared to the other ones, and it was Spider-Man. And I think I want like my parents would always like when I put that game on, I just have memories of like my parents like, oh, Spider-Man, like they'd talk about Spider-Man because they read Spider-Man. They were like deep into superhero comics and shit. So like my uncle and my parents would like talk about Spider-Man a lot. And I think I absorbed my fondness for Spider-Man from them. And they were only talking about it because I was the little kid playing the Atari and they were adults probably like hanging out and drinking in the room and just like talking about Spider-Man. So I wonder if the kids that are like around us at our parties will have like fond memories of the video games that we talked about.
So things about Spider-Man that are cool, and I think this applies to all the most of the Spider-Man incarnations, right?
Yeah, we can ignore
Is that
like the
number
edge
one,
case exceptions.
Spider-Man is usually right. He's primarily a journalistic photographer, right? But he's also been like a teacher, or he's always in some sort of admirable profession, right? I guess he's also sometimes a high school student.
Yep, but like doing good work, trying hard in his real life, irrespective of spider
Right,
powers.
which is also, Superman as well is just a journalist, straight up, right? But he's always, he's doing admirable, important work, right? Alongside his Spider-Manning, but unlike when Superman is a journalist, right? It's like he goes out and he's not journalisting while he's Superman, right? Lois Lane is he's sort of creating a scene, making sure Lois Lane sees him so she can write about what he's doing, right? Spider-Man is like sticking a camera on the wall while he fights a villain to make sure he gets some photos of himself, right? So it's sort of a different situation there.
That's I think what one of my favorite bits about Spider-Man in general was like he had to have a hustle to make it work with the like pictures of Spider-Man thing.
Yep.
I enjoyed it would just portray like he has to like get a picture of himself solving this crime.
I remember in there's a super Sega Genesis Spider-Man game. I think it might just be called Spider-Man. It was the first Spider-Man game for the Genesis. And what you'd have to do is when you'd get to like a boss, like I remember, is Dr. Octopus, fight him, but you take a photo of him first and then you'd fight him. Right? It had like a button to take photos of stuff. It was like part of the thing. But also, right? Much, still relevant today as it was in the 60s, right? Obviously the secret identity was a trope of all superheroes back then, right? But Spider-Man was, a normal person living a normal life, right? Whereas, you look at some of the other superheroes that even if they had secret identities, they didn't necessarily always have a very good reason for them, right? It's like Batman. It's like if people knew Bruce Wayne was Batman, it's like Bruce Wayne's a rich dude. It's not actually sort of a big problem for him.
Or he doesn't need an alter ego because based on many portrayals of Batman, he could just be like, oh yeah, that's where the crazy old billionaire lives, and just like be invisible to society and just be Batman full time.
Right, but Spider-Man has like, depending on what time it is, right? He has a family, he's a normal person, he has a wife, right? At some points, right? And it's like he's protecting those people, not himself, right? In the same way that like doxing of internet celebrities is a thing these days, right? It's like, he wasn't so much protecting himself as he was protecting these other people around him, right? Because he had fame, right? He didn't necessarily want to be famous. He just wanted to, to do well, right, with his powers, right?
And he's often very zoomed in, like wisecracking like with one random kid on the street as a little aside before like the other story starts.
Spider-Man always, the other superheroes, right? They do, the smallest thing Superman does is catch someone falling off a building, right? Superman doesn't go and like play basketball with the kids, right?
Yeah.
Spider-Man does that not only in comics, but like in real life, people put on a Spider-Man costume and play basketball with the kids. And it's like, even though, right, like someone else putting on some other superhero costume, even a Spider-Man one, doing shit like shaking down tourists for money and photos, or, birthday parties and stuff, right? But it's like, if you do that in a Spider-Man costume as opposed to like an Iron Man costume, it feels kind of real, actually, even as an adult. It's like, yeah, that's your friend in a Spider-Man costume at the kid's birthday party, but it's like Spider-Man, the real Spider-Man would totally do that.
Yep.
So
I'm pretty
is
sure
sort of
Spider-Man has
actually
like
Spider-Man.
literally shown up at a kid's birthday more than once in like all the different runs of Spider-Man.
I think I was in like I think I had like a high school. I knew it was when I was in high school. It was my brother's friends in high school who did that like as a job, just like being Spider-Man at kids' birthday parties. And it's like it's a good deal, but also like you could like if you're a kid and it's like if you're a kid and Batman shows up, it's like you sort of know it's not Batman.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway.
But the one thing I have not read is many Spider-Man comics.
I've
seen many of the movies but I never particularly liked that many of them until Spider-Verse, which was just such a triumph that basically
not the live action movies, meh.
Some of them were better than others.
I've only seen one, and meh.
I've seen several. Like the first Tobey Maguire one, I like pretty well.
That's probably the one I saw, right? The upside down kiss one.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Because in that era, like superhero movies were particularly bad, and that one, the Spider-Man one, was actually pretty good.
That was like when they started, right? Becoming a thing, right? Now they're too much of a thing. Yeah. So I mean, of the Spider-Man comics that I have read, right? It's like there are sort of different kinds of them. They go into different categories, right? It's like a lot of the old ones, the super old ones, like the actual Stan Lee, Steve Ditko ones. Some of them are obviously super corny and old, right? But along with their corny and oldness, they also have some really impactful stories. Really similar to what you get with Fantastic Four, which is also, I guess that's a Stan Lee and Kirby joint, but I guess it's a Stan Lee thing, right? Where it's like you're sort of mixing the corniness with also, the very sort of powerful human tales, right? And if you can figure out which issues, right? Like there's the famous one where he's trapped under all the machine that like collapsed in on him, and there's like it takes him several pages to like lift the machine off of himself while he talks to himself, right? And it's like that's the same comics exactly where you get really corny stuff like wisecracking at like some really corny ass villains that no one remembers.
But one thing I liked is that the Spider-Man's wisecracking, even in the early comics, was always just better written and fit better in the universe than most of the other superheroes that would try to wisecrack or talk to themselves or talk to the reader.
Well, I think Dan Slott, who actually who's wrote Spider-Man for a long, long time, actually more recently, and Dan Slott, if you don't know, the first time I ever read a Dan Slott comic, it was a Ren and Stimpy Marvel comic.
Oh wow!
Yeah, Dan Slott is like a great superhero writer. He had a Twitter thread recently where he talked about how like, hey, these are the reason, if you're writing Spider-Man, wisecracking at people, right? These are like the do's and don'ts, right? He's like, Spider-Man sometimes he'll wisecrack at people to calm his own nerves, right? Or his sense of humor is like this, right? And people who've written Spider-Man haven't always followed those rules, right? When writing him. So it's like you might pick up a Spider-Man comic and actually find an asshole Spider-Man in there because there's been so many different people writing it over the years, right? But the good Spider-Man, right, is written the way Dan said in that Twitter thread.
Yeah, well, also the Spider-Man seems to have a better continuity of character than a lot of other popular, like Batman is a similarly well-known popular character, but Batman is on this like widely swinging scale of from Adam West on one side to like I am Batman on the other side. Like every Batman is so different.
I found the thread and it won't take that long to read, right? So it's like it bugs me. So Dan Slott says. Spider rant. It bugs me when Spider fans say that Spidey only uses his jokes and quips to disorient his foes. That is one way Spidey uses his sense of humor, Spider-Man's sense of humor is also one of his most versatile tools. It's practically his superpower, right? He also uses it to distract civilians when they're in stressful situations, right? Like if Spider-Man picks someone up off the ground swinging on a thing, he always says something funny to him, right? Every time, right? To amuse himself and put himself at ease, right? He's always talking to himself, even if there's no one else around, right? He's just like, angsting on a.
I mean, look, they even
building top or
lampooned that in
something.
Spider-Verse, where like as he becomes Spider-Man, spoilers, the kid becomes Spider-Man. he starts like having this inner monologue that was loud and wasn't there before. Like he starts to wisecrack. Like that's almost part of his superpowers.
Right. To make himself appear foolish, so people underestimate him, which is very true, right? Spider-Man, it's like he's sort of like people forget the spider part, like insect, like. You don't actually think of spiders too much when you think of Spider-Man.
I think a wisecracking guy swinging through a city.
Right. He's the only thing really spider-like about him, except for the fact that spiders also make webs and he climbs on walls, is that he's a pest, but insects are pests and spiders aren't insects, right? But regardless, he's like ridiculously strong, right? Not Superman strong, but still ridiculously strong. But yet, if you look at him next to the other heroes, even in just the Marvel Universe, it's like he looks weak compared to them, right? It's like Thor is there, the literal god, and here's Spider-Man, a guy who swings on a rope.
But it's pretty canonically consistent that Spider-Man is strong and powerful enough to hold his own in those environments.
He can pick cars up and throw them at people. Right? It's like he's not messing around. But also, the final thing on the list is he uses jokes to strike back at jerks like Jonah, right? His boss, who he can't punch, right? But he can, harass them with verbally. And of course, to goof around and bond with the other superheroes, right? So pretty much anytime Spider-Man talks to another superhero, it's always making fun of them, right? It's like no matter what, he has a nickname for every other superhero, right? He's just sort of making fun. It's like he is a superhero, but all the other superheroes are sort of taking themselves seriously at being superheroes, right? Whereas Spider-Man, despite being almost the first of those superheroes, right, is sort of meta, right? And sort of outside of the rest of them. He's like, I was here before most of you, right? Whether that's, true or not.
I'm just doing my thing. Don't mess up New York.
Right. But,
stay out of Queens.
Right. He's just messing with the rest of them and sort of, giving you, again, you're identifying with him not only in that he's like you, right, in some way, but also in that he's outside, not quite entirely breaking the fourth wall, but still outside of the rest of the universe that he is occupying from the reader's perspective.
Which is good because a lot of Spider-Man media is very like just Spider-Man. Even if it's an alternate Spider-Man or a weird Spider-Man or Spider-Man's dead, but then he isn't, or that's actually Venom or whatever, it's still like Spider-Man stories are more often self-contained with not as much crazy crossover nonsense with the rest of the universe. Not that doesn't happen, though.
Yeah. It depends which one you read or whatever, right? It happens all the time.
It's tough because whatever Spider-Man I liked, like Spider-Verse was basically like the height of Spider-Man for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, how much Spider-Man have you read? There's plenty of Spider-Man.
I haven't read a lot. I've seen a lot.
I mean, if you read Miles Morales Spider-Man, that's what that is.
Yeah,
right?
Probably should just read that actually at some point.
It's like if you find yourself saying, man, I watched all these. I don't read a lot of comics, right? I watched a bunch of Spider-Man movies or superhero movies, and I really liked this Spider-Verse one, right? You look at me, I'm someone who's like, hey, I read a lot of comics. I don't like a lot of superhero movies, right? But I like that one because it was like the comics. Well, guess what? If you like that movie, you're going to like the comics because they're like that movie, right? It's more like comics than any superhero movie ever was.
Oh, I mean, look at how many people watch these like Marvel Cinematic Universe movies that aren't Spider-Man, but then they get excited like, oh, I'll go read the comics, and that usually doesn't go well.
The comic is not like those, right? Which is a lot of reasons why I don't like those. They're not like comics.
Yeah.
They're just the same characters, superficially or, more than superficially sometimes, right?
But one thing I can say, though, the only thing I've never, like, even the Spider-Man comics I've read, I've never been super jazzed about the villains that Spider-Man is facing, I'm usually really focused on Spider-Man. Whereas with any other superhero stuff, I find myself often more interested in the villains. Like I like Batman villains a lot.
Well, I think that's exactly what I think most people would agree with, right? Even in Star Wars, it's like, yeah, the Empire are bad guys. I'm not rooting for them, but listen, there's no denying that at least aesthetically, Darth Vader and the Emperor are cooler than whiny Luke Skywalker.
Yep.
Right? There's Han Solo is cool, right? Luke Skywalker, how cool is he really? Not cool.
Yep.
Princess Leia is cool, right? C-3PO is maybe cool. R2-D2 is cool.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, but like, TIE fighters, they're cooler than, X-Wings mostly, kind of, right? Right?
Yeah.
Same thing. So Batman, it's like, Batman, he's okay, right? But it's like, the Joker is cooler than Batman, right? That's why
that
they
was
made
actually
like a fucking Joker
long
movie.
setup joke in the Venture Brothers where there's this assassin guy and the kid bonds with him because they both love superhero comics and Batman is their favorite comic. It's like this long thing. And at the very end, it turns out the guy's the evil assassin. The kid's like, but you love Batman. How could you be this way? And he's like, kid, I only like Batman for the villains.
That's right. The villains are cooler than
Yep. Mostly because I'm just poking at the Spider-Man Wikipedia and I'm scrolling through the list of villains because it's a list of like every major villain Spider-Man's ever fought. Like this is not the A list of villains here.
No, I mean you got guys like because most of it is like corny stuff, right? It's like guy who dresses up in a rhino costume.
That was exactly the Rhino was the first one I was gonna
lizard. You got the lizard guy.
Yep.
You got a lot of times he'll be like messing with other heroes. He'll get tangled up with them, right?
Yep.
Sometimes. You got Dr. Octopus, right? Who's okay, I guess. You got Green Goblins, Hobgoblin, all kinds of goblins involved, right?
The Jackal.
Oh yeah, the Jackal.
I remember the Jackal. I think the Jackal was in the cartoon.
The Jackal was very lizard related. You got Mysterio, who's kind of cool, a little bit maybe.
Yeah, I like Mysterio, Kingpin.
Kingpin. Yeah,
Venom.
Kingpin's more of a
I thought Venom was
villain.
interesting.
Venom Venom is like a whole thing unto itself. That's that's sort of like the cool villain syndrome, right? Where it's like it was Spider-Man, but then it was someone else.
It was too cool, so it had to be its own thing.
And then it was Carnage, right?
But like Electro missed me with that.
Yeah, it's like most Spider-Man villains are just like wacky dude. At least in, it's like, there are stories where they're written well and they don't come across as wacky dude, right? But it's like the classic Spider-Man comics, those villains are just, all right, it's a different weirdo guy, right?
But I think that's because the stories tended to focus more on Peter or whoever is Spider-Man navigating their real life and spider life simultaneously, and that's usually the thread.
The drama was, Aunt May something, dealing with my wife, dealing with, Jonah, dealing with whatever, right? And the villain was just sort of there to be like, hey, this guy Spider-Man is dealing with all this shit in his life, and that's the parts you care about. And while he's dealing with all that, he's got to find some nut dressed up like a rhino.
Yep. Like if I had to really
on top of everything else, right?
But that on top of everything else is just it. If I had to really crystallize this idea, it's that with a lot of superhero things, the identity is just boring, and as soon as there's a villain and a fight, like, yeah, that's all I'm here for. Like, yes, finally, he's not just like in his house. But with Spider-Man, when the villain shows up, I'm like, but I want to follow. I want to follow this story. I want to see what happens. Now I got to go watch this fight. What's Peter gonna do?
Right, and that's another way in that it is much like real life. I think anyone you're gonna find a Spider-Man in interpretation somewhere that is for you, right? And I think in this way, it's for everyone. In that it's like, you got the shit you're dealing with in your real life, and suddenly there's this fucking plague. All right, that's just right.
Yeah, talk about a boring villain.
It's just everyone's guy in a rhino costume just coming up, right? On top of everything else, got a pandemic to deal with, right?
Yep. Also, we gotta
the same way Spider-Man feels when someone robs a bank and he's got to do something about it.
We gotta mention at least briefly that original terrible Spider-Man theme is brilliant.
Oh, the original song, dude.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's from the original Spider-Man cartoon from way back when or whatever.
Like the continuity of that jingle.
Yeah, I mean that song. I don't know who wrote that song. You could probably. I'm sure. I don't. What do I know about the history of that song? Nothing. Go look it up. You'll right.
I am looking it up to see if I can provide some commentary.
But what I do know is that song.
J. Robert Harris wrote it.
Right, my favorite.
It has its own Wikipedia article.
I'm sure it does. Yeah, my favorite thing about that song is when there was a TV commercial for Bomberman 64 that reused that song, and instead of doing Spider-Man, it was Bomberman. It was Bomberman.
Yeah.
Right. Drops bombs across the lake.
All right, so the story is kind of interesting. So it was composed by this Paul Francis Webster and Robert Bob Harris. It was recorded by RCA in Toronto, and they got together a whole bunch of CBC vocalist groups, like the Billy Van Singers and all these other like groups that were famous in their day. And then they had backing tracks added later from New York. It was kind of cobbled together.
Just like any other low-rent TV production.
Yep. It was the
day.
lowest rent. Like, we need a fucking jingle. Just make it. No one gives a shit. All the people who sang were paid for the gig. There were no residuals. Like, no one even thought that anyone would care about this song ever again.
I mean, if you go back to the 60s or whatever, there were plenty of similar jingles, right? I mean, people in New York, right, noted Mets fan Spider-Man would know the song "Meet the Mets," right, which is a jingle with a similar sort of history. There was like a contest to make a song to for the Mets, right? And it's a similar kind of 60s commercial jingle thing. There's tons of them, but only the ones that are associated with properties that survived, like Spider-Man and the Mets, right, are remembered and stuck in people's heads to this day, right? So
yep, you're all thinking this song in your head right now. You can't avoid it.
I'm sure there are plenty of other commercial jingles from the retro times that are similarly catchy and were just associated with things that no longer exist, and the jingles didn't get enough play to stick in the collective societal memory.
So I feel like I'm thinking about this because actually the listener mentioned that they also loved Spider-Man 2099. I feel like I should read Spider-Man 2099 because I don't know anything about it.
I have every issue of Spider-Man 2099. You should absolutely read it, and then we could do like a whole series of episodes on it.
I'm game for that.
Spider-Man 2099 is basically it's the year 2099.
Yeah,
right?
the cyberpunk Spider-Man.
The Marvel universe is now a cyberpunk universe where evil corporations run everything, and Dr. Doom eventually becomes president.
Wait, this
Spoilers.
might be a little too real. Maybe I don't want to read this in 2020.
It's very real. And Spider-Man is this dude called Miguel O'Hara, and he is a genetics researcher for the big evil corporation.
And doesn't he accidentally Spider-Manify himself?
No, he's a huge-ass jerk, right? He's not a nice person, and he basically somewhat intentionally Spider-Mans himself. Right, he has a holographic assistant, just sort of like Blade Runner situation, right? And he Spider-Mans himself, and then shit happens, and his brother is the good person, he's the bad person. Even though he does end up fighting people who are worse than him. It's mostly a cyberpunk story, right, and not really, and also a Spider-Man story, but he's not like a he's not like doing a good job of anything, right? He's like the drug addict.
Yeah. Begrudgingly like, oh, I got a Spider-Man something.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, I'm game for this.
But yeah.
So yeah, Spider-Man. We've gone on long enough. We can stop the show there unless we have more to say.
I mean, you could talk about Spider-Man's. There's so much material. You could just talk forever. But
yep, like you could probably make an entire podcast that just talked about Spider-Man in film.
I'm sure there probably is such a podcast.
I'm sure there is. You go listen to that if you're craving more.
Spider-Man things there are. It's like
bring me podcasts of Spider-Man.
I think it's just a property of media in general, right? Is that when something gets big enough, right? When something gets big enough and popular enough, then suddenly the meta of it becomes worthy of discussion.
Yeah, it's like some sea creatures that get like their own ecosystem that just like surrounds them.
Right. So like, did you know there's like a James Bond magazine? I don't know how often it comes out. But like
I can imagine the exact kind of person who subscribes to James Bond magazine.
I don't know if it's monthly or quarterly or whatever, but like there's an official James Bond magazine. It's like that just keeps coming out all the time, right? It's like Spider-Man is big enough that like, this amazing Spider-Man, spectacular Spider-Man, there's so many Spider-Man, there's different Spider-Man comics all the time, right? It's like once you're big enough, you just create this fountain where just like you can't stop your own growth media wise, right?
Yep.
Because even if you don't make things that are official canon materials,
you got fans making stuff. You got
fans, meta stuff.
Lit crit people talking about your stuff. You've got
It'll just
foreign
become a
knockoffs.
never-ending.
People who just straight up steal it and make their own version of Spider-Man, which is
And then you get, in every media, if you get media, you get the video games, you get the toys, you get like people just making things that have nothing to do with it. Like someone will buy a fucking bicycle, but they'll make it a Spider-Man bicycle. They'll paint it red and blue and put webbing on it.
You know what I will say though? You talk about a piece of Spider-Man media, that Atari 2600 Spider-Man game. People make fun of it for being like an old bad Atari game, but honestly, it's one of the best Atari 2600 games. It's a legit real game.
There's not a lot of competition there.
Yep, but I'm saying it's a pretty good game.
Spider-Man makes much better video games than a lot of other superheroes.
Yep, I hesitate to speculate why, because I don't know, but
I think it's just because the verbs of Spider-Man, right, is you can make a game.
Well, his powers are simple. Like there's a small set of powers.
A Batman game, you walk down the street beating up guys, and then you throw a batarang. Right?
Yep.
Whereas a Spider-Man game, you have the verb of swinging on webs, which is what makes it, or like I said, taking photos of bad guys.
Yep.
You have these extra verbs, right? Whereas most other superheroes...
Batman could have like the interrogation verb. It's just most people who make games
no one's made a Batman game like that.
Yeah, that's the problem. For whatever reason, Batman games tend to be just side-scrolling beat-em-ups, or now...
Most video games tend to be action games, and no matter what superhero you have, it doesn't really make the game any different, right? Captain America, he throws a shield. Yep. Hawkeye shoots a bow and arrow, and
do a palette swap, and you could sell the same game for two different superheroes.
It's like you walk down the street punching stuff, or you fly around punching stuff.
Palette swap that Genesis game, and someone's like, "Why is Captain America taking pictures of the Red Skull?"
But like, there's that new-ish, PlayStation Spider-Man game that's supposed to be ridiculously good.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, you know what? You know what I found in VR chat the other day? A Spider-Man world. And when I went into it to see what the deal was, you know what it is? It's an infinite, endless New York City skyline, and you can just web swing through it in VR. That's it. That's the whole fucking world.
There you go. It's great.
It actually was real fun. I had to go find like some bootleg Spider-Man avatar, and I went in there, and you know what it was? 20 other people, everyone dressed as Spider-Man. One person legit had a JJJ avatar instead, and he was swinging around yelling at people for photos, and it was all these like bootleg Spider-Man flying around in this virtual world.
But no one's doing that in a Batman world.
Nope. I don't know if I didn't even see any Batman worlds. No one's doing that in the
Captain America world. Would be boring as hell.
Yep.
Right? Not that I don't like Captain America for other reasons, but still, that would be boring.
So yeah, if you somehow have not, like, I'm sure all of you, 100% of the listener is aware of the existence of Spider-Man. But if you've never consumed any Spider-Man media, honestly, I would recommend consuming some Spider-Man media directly instead of just absorbing it through osmosis, because Spider-Man on the level, pretty good overall.
Yeah, I would recommend, if you don't know, this is like basically an infinite. You could read Spider-Man comics for the rest of your life unless you narrow yourself down, like that Silver Age Spider-Man guy. So what I would recommend doing, right, is read some of the original Spider-Man, right, by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, right, and then if you want to find other good Spider-Mans, right, look for Spider-Man that is written by Dan Slott, or if you're like in the Spider-Verse, which you should be, find some Miles Morales Spider-Man or some Ultimate Spider-Man, which you can, just start reading from like issue 1 or whatever, right?
Yep.
And those are going to be like, your good go-to Spider-Mans to start, if you just want to read some Spider-Man comic. Spider-Man 2099 is not really going to give you, it's going to give you some Spider-Man, but like I said, it's mostly going to give you some Cyberpunk, which is also good.
I guess one nice thing, though, is that most Spider-Man media is more close to the mean compared to other superheroes where, like, you read the wrong one and it's just super weird and way different from all the other ones.
Spider-Man, there's an infant. I have it all over here, actually, because I have 5 giant books, which I'm going to read and then get rid of. There's an infamous Spider-Man The Clone Saga, which is where the Jackal that you mentioned, right? Basically, this whole thing gets messed up where there's another guy who... Spider-Man doesn't know he's Spider-Man. There's possibly a clone of Spider-Man, and it's like all mixed up, right? Like the guy who is Peter Parker doesn't know he is anymore. The memories and basically it's the derided, island episodes of Spider-Man.
Yeah, which
Um,
a media franchise this big, like an IP this big, there's gonna be some island episodes. There's no way to avoid that.
Yeah. Another also, if you want to read some good Spider-Man, I could also recommend. I don't know exactly what issues it is, but you could find it easily by Googling. I'm sure there's trade paperbacks of it. There is the point at which I guess there was Secret Wars, and it's during Secret Wars, which is a big crossover event, right? Spider-Man finds basically effectively a space sewing machine, and in the space sewing machine, he sews himself the black costume, right, and puts it on. And the black costume is obviously an alien that later becomes Venom. It's not just a costume.
Yeah, but there's a whole arc that like leads to that. Like people didn't know what this was when they read this originally.
So you could read Secret Wars if you want to. It's not that bad. It's dated, but it's still a bit. It's one of the earlier comic crossover things. You can understand it if you read it. You don't need to actually read all the crossover issues. But you read the Spider-Man comics that directly follow after that, and they're easy to find because Spider-Man's wearing a different costume, right? And if you read those and the saga of Spider-Man having that costume up to the point at which he gets rid of it and it becomes Venom, right? When it finds another host. Those are pretty good Spider-Mans to read also.
Yeah. I've actually read a bunch of that. I'm weirdly more familiar with the Venom stuff than I am with Spider-Man stuff from that era.
Yep. So I guess that might be like, I don't know exactly when that was. Was that late 80s, early 90s?
This Wikipedia page is too long for me to scroll and find that right now.
Of course it is. Secret Wars came out in 84, so I guess mid 80s.
Oh, here we go. Spider-Man 252, 1984, the black costume debut.
Yep.
That brought controversy to many fans. The suit was later revealed as an alien symbiote and was... okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Wikipedia.
Yep. There you go.
So yeah, check out some Spider-Mans. All right, I think it was a fine